Could the person Kang mentioned in the scene actually be Steve Rogers? As you may remember, in Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, Kang told Scott Lang that he had fought the Avengers and killed them in numerous universes before, and based on that, he asked him if he was someone who used a hammer.
Blur together after a while. You're not the one with the hammer.
It's Thor.
Although the first person that comes to everyone's mind in this scene is Thor, Kang may actually not have been referring to Thor. Because Scott does not resemble Thor in any way, it would be very strange for him to ask such a question. When he says at one point that they all start to look alike, he may actually be referring to Steve eventually growing a beard and using Mjolnir. In other words, when Steve Rogers was Captain America, he did not just wield Mjolnir. At some point, he also started to resemble Thor, and the key character behind all these invasions and even the return of the multiverse may have been none other than Steve Rogers. A lot of people ask me this. Why is Loki helping Steve Rogers, and why is he leaving him a TVA card? In other words, what exactly makes Steve Rogers so special in Loki's eyes? Actually, Loki is thanking Steve Rogers in this scene. He is basically saying, because you gave me a second chance, I want to give you a second chance as well. Because Loki's fate was originally to live a life filled with evil and eventually die. However, Steve Rogers convinced the Avengers team to travel into the past, and because of that, Loki got a second chance. Maybe to become a hero, maybe to find himself, or maybe to build a new life. In the end, instead of dying at the beginning of Infinity War, Loki became the man who stood above everything. And because he felt indebted to Steve Rogers for that, he would give Steve a second chance and bring him to another universe. The important thing here is that the multiverse was set free thanks to Captain America and the Avengers team, and Kang emerged. Even though Steve decided to travel into the past, he was going to return all of the Infinity Stones to their respective timelines, and that is exactly what he did. In fact, a series featuring these scenes was actually planned. We were going to watch a series showing how Steve Rogers returned the stones. A lot of people think he had to put the stones back exactly where he took them from. They think he took most of them out of their containers or something like that. But that is not the case at all. Simply returning the stones to the points in time from which he took them is enough. Otherwise, the timelines would begin to decay. So he does not actually have to return them to the exact places where he found them. He only needs to return them to the correct points in time. While Steve was returning the stones, he was supposed to encounter the Kangs, and Loki was supposed to become involved in the events afterward. In other words, Steve and Loki were supposed to cross paths in a universe under attack by the Kangs. Because the Council of Kangs is on high alert, the TVA is preventing Kang variants from attacking the timelines, and Steve and Loki were supposed to come face to face in the same timeline while intervening in one of these attacks. In this scene, Mobius says that the Kang variant from Quantumania caused trouble in a universe near Earth 616.
Do any of them know that we exist yet?
Oh, I guess one of them caused a little bit of a ruckus on 616 adjacent room.
There are two neighboring universes to Earth 616. One of them is the X-Men cinematic universe, and the other is the Fantastic Four universe. However, what was important at the time was being able to introduce the Fantastic Four universe. After all, Doomsday is about the collision of these three universes. This means that the Kang from Quantumania attacked Earth 828, meaning the Fantastic Four universe, and was later exiled to the quantum realm. No matter how you look at it, this is a very good and fitting detail because it explains incredibly well where Loki and Steve could have met. As you know, the Endgame Encore version is coming to theaters this year. In fact, a trailer was even shown at Comic-Con recently. The trailer was leaked, and I could not fully determine whether new scenes had been added. I think they shared a classic new trailer for the film, and they are going to add around 7 minutes of additional footage, perhaps even more. So we are going to watch a 3-hour movie for 7 minutes. But in order not to disrupt the overall structure of the film, these 7 minutes will most likely be added directly to the finale. A lot of people are already wondering about this. Wait, this Chris Evans guy looks like Captain America, but his hair is fake. You probably know this. They use wigs and prosthetic hair, and most Marvel actors already do this before filming. Even Tom Holland had a wig on his head for Brand New Day. I have seen people asking why Chris Evans was clean-shaven during the filming, if he is going to appear as a bearded Captain America in the movie. That's because he needed to look this way for the filming done for both the beginning of Doomsday and the Endgame Encore version. Actually, Captain America is a character who is much more knowledgeable about the multiverse than Thor, and Steve Rogers was probably the first person to encounter the Council of Kangs. For this reason, Marvel's Trojan horse that looks like Thor could actually be Steve Rogers. No matter how we look at it, the only person who can currently serve as the bridge between Endgame, the Encore version, and Doomsday is Steve Rogers. Some people will say it could also be Loki. However, Loki will not have such a major role in Doomsday. In other words, he will remain far behind Steve Rogers. Sometimes I get annoyed when people recommend unnecessary productions by saying, you absolutely have to watch these shows or these movies before watching the next Marvel film. Don't get me wrong, but if we're only going to see Loki in one or two scenes, as it seems, then don't watch the Loki series before Doomsday. Watch it before the Endgame Encore version and then go see Endgame. Some people take this so far that Marvel would never assume that everyone going to watch Doomsday has watched the Loki series. Marvel knows that not everyone who watches Doomsday will have watched Loki. Do you think there is a reason for the Endgame Encore version? Of course. It is meant to give cinema audiences a 7-minute summary and fill in the backstory. Just think about how many characters we met throughout the 2 seasons of Loki. More than half of the seasons were already focused solely on Kang's story. So why did none of this appear in the movies? We have almost never seen the series and movies fully merge with each other. Because they realized that movies could not be marketed this way. They can use movies to market the series, but they cannot use the series to market the movies. Sometimes I see people saying, you need to watch more than 30 movies and this many shows before Doomsday. And I am going to be very straightforward. Even someone who has never watched a Marvel movie could easily go and watch Doomsday. They are already going to introduce completely new characters and provide completely new information about the universes. They may not understand everything, but after leaving the theater, they can simply watch whatever they're curious about and fill in the missing pieces. So there's no situation where you need to watch and know absolutely everything before the movie. Because not everything is as necessary as people make it seem. It is better than watching 2 seasons of a series about a character and then being disappointed when you do not even see that character on screen for a minute. If additional scenes featuring Loki and Steve Rogers were made for the Encore version, then it is normal for us to see less of Loki in Doomsday. That's why I say, if you have never watched Loki, watch it before the Encore version and then go see the movie. Apparently, it will be released on September 25th, and a trailer will even be released. Yes, a trailer for the new version of Endgame. What Marvel is currently waiting for is for Brand New Day to leave theaters. As soon as Brand New Day leaves theaters, they will start marketing only Doomsday. Because Disney or Marvel gets 25% of the profits from Spider-Man, Brand New Day, while Sony gets the remaining 75%. Now imagine that they make more than $1 billion in profit from this movie. They will have pocketed at least $250 million. For this reason, they also do not want to lose the hype generated by a movie that is making them money, which is why we are not seeing new Doomsday-related announcements yet. But if Brand New Day continues like this, it will probably remain in theaters until around the middle of September. Of course, our priority now has become these 7 minutes of additional footage. After all, we already know Endgame. It was a production full of many continuity errors and, unfortunately, a film that fell far short of Infinity War in terms of quality. Of course, it is normal for Endgame to have mistakes. When they were trying to shoot so many movies back to back, something was bound to go wrong somewhere. I do not know whether they will fix the continuity errors in the new version, but this version will now be accepted as the new canon. We will consider this version canon rather than the version we watched before. In this way, they will have connected the Avengers movies together back to back. For example, what difference does it make whether you watch Ironheart or not? Toward the end of September, when this version is released in theaters, we will truly understand which productions matter and which do not. I believe that after the Encore version, there will not even be a need to watch the Loki series. Look, the Loki series was a very good show. Everyone would probably agree with that. But 70% of the show's story focused on Kang, and the Kang storyline is now over. That chapter is completely finished. If a Kang appears after the reboot, it will not have any connection to the story. Marvel seems to be aware of this, which is why they appear to have made this version so that people can go into the movie without watching Loki again, and without getting too hung up on Kang. Because someone who watched 2 seasons of Loki would expect Kang to be the main villain. But then they will look up and see Doctor Doom standing in front of them. They will think, then why did we watch all of this Kang story? So at this point, watching the 2 seasons of Loki does not really seem all that necessary. On the contrary, even if they prepared a summary of Loki, that would probably be enough. Yes, this does not exactly count as a reboot, but I think it will be a small retcon. And with that, friends, we have come to the end of another video. I hope you enjoyed the content I prepared. If there are other videos you would like me to make, don't forget to write them in the comments. That's all from me for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye.